So today's video is all about the DIY gelatin plate again. I'll be covering everything I left out in my last video, answering your most asked questions and filling in some gaps that came up. If you haven't seen that video yet, it might be a good idea to watch it first. In it, I shared how I got started with gelatin plates and what I've learned over the past 12 months. I walked you through my go-to recipe for a long-lasting gelatin plate, showed you step by step how to create a casting mold from a picture frame, and on top of that, introduced my absolutely genius and free gel plate recipe calculator. This tool lets you switch between imperial and metric, enter your desired gelatin plate size, and instantly get the exact measurements you need for your DIY gel plate. Welcome back to Ashray Makes, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm on a mission to find creative ways to make cool stuff on a budget. Okay, we need to talk. I knew the moment I finished my last video that I had left out a few points. They were still on my list, but after working on the project for over 50 hours, my brain just couldn't take it anymore. I was exhausted, and since I was already a week late publishing, I decided to let go of perfection and just get it out here. I told myself, if needed, I can always do a follow-up video. And here we are. That's exactly what I'm doing now. Sorry for the slight sloppiness, and apologies in advance if this video is a little bit more of the technical side. I do my best to keep it fun. Gelatin, heating methods, alcohol, cleaning, maintenance and refreshing, and some frame variations. Oh, and how I busted a myth. At the beginning of each section, I'll answer the main question as quickly and concisely as possible. Then I'll go a little deeper into the topic. And if you are not interested in the deep dive, feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter. All right, let's jump into the first topic. Yes, as long as your gelatin is 100% pure, it doesn't matter whether it's in sheet or powdered form. Both will work. This question came the most, and first I hesitated. Here is the thing. In Germany, we have a powdered gelatin called instant gelatin. But if you check the ingredients, it contains a lot of maltodextrin and only a little actual gelatin. That type won't work for gel plates. Ever heard of Oscar T. Bloom? He invented the Bloom gelimeter in 1925, and since then the Bloom value has been used to measure the gelling strength of gelatin. The Bloom value ranges between 50 and 325 and indicates how firm the gelatin sets. The higher the number, the stronger the gel. To make things easier, it's usually divided into 3 categories: silver, gold, platinum. Most store-bought gelatin doesn't specify its strengths, but if there is no label, you can assume it's in the gold category. And that's perfect, because for DIY gel plates, you want the medium to strong gelatin. Between beef and pork gelatin, I personally prefer pork. It produced the most clear gel plate with the least yellowish tint. I don't know if beef gelatin is always more on the yellow side, but that was my experience. Also, pork gelatin generally has a slightly higher gelling strength. If you prefer beef gelatin for religious reasons, it won't affect the quality of your gel plate or printing results. And what if you don't want to use animal products at all? I have to be honest, I'm not an expert if it comes to the vegan version of the gel plate. I did test an agar-agar plate, and while the printing results were fantastic, the handling was a little tricky. It doesn't have the same rubbery feel as gelatin, and one wrong move can break the plate. But I plan some research on this topic and see if I can come up with a stronger, more durable, long-lasting vegan plate. If I succeed, you will be the first to know. Yes, of course, you can just as easily heat the mixture in a pot on the stove. Just make sure to heat it slowly, stirring constantly, and avoid boiling or introducing too much air. But there's a reason why I have switched to using the microwave exclusively. Let me explain. I noticed that whenever I melted down my gel plate in the microwave, I ended up with almost no sticky foam. But when I heated it on a stove, I got a lot of sticky foam. I can't say for sure if this is directly related to the stove method or if something else is at play. But based on my experience, I found the microwave approach to be so much easier, and that's why I stick with it. Air bubbles? Easy fix. You can either use a torch and wave it quickly over the surface, or spray a little high percentage alcohol onto the surface. This trick also helps reduce sticky foam, but in my experience it doesn't always get rid of it completely. If there's any leftover foam, I simply skim it off with a paper towel, a newspaper page or a spoon. I know there is a method where you pour boiling water over the gelatin instead of heating it gradually, but honestly, that just feels so wrong to me. I've always been used to blooming gelatin in cold water first, and then slowly heating it. So I never actually tried that boiling water method. I assume it works, but since I can't say for sure, I can't tell you to do it this way. Maybe I'll test it someday, who knows? I don't think there were any questions about alcohol, but I like to share some of my experience in this video. I've tried all kind of alcohol for this, and so far my favorite has been drinkable alcohol. But since that can get a bit pricey, I switched to isopropyl alcohol instead. I've tested both the 99% and the 70%, and I personally prefer the 70%. It seems to produce less sticky foam, especially when using the stove method, and the gel plate has almost no alcohol smell. Place the shrunken gel plate back into the mold and add water until it reaches the original size. If necessary, mark the original height on the mold beforehand. Then cut the plate into small pieces, heat it together with the added water and melt everything completely. Done! Align the gel plate flush with two edges of the mold and measure the gaps on the other two sides. Then use my gel plate calculator. Enter the gap measurements once for each side, and the calculated total volume will tell you how much water is missing. Since water and gel plate liquid have nearly the same density, you can use weight for calculation. Calculate the total volume of the original size in grams and add the weight of the gelatin used. Then weigh your shrunken gel plate. The difference between the original weight and the current weight equals the missing water. For instance, is the difference 256 grams, you will need to add 256 milliliter of water. But please keep in mind, making gel plates is not rocket science. Especially with larger plates, you don't need to be that precise to the last gram or milliliter. A difference of, let's say 20 milliliter more or less won't make a noticeable impact. I only briefly touched on cleaning in my last video. There weren't really any questions about it, and I don't have much to add. However, I do want to mention that you can clean your gel plate with baby oil or a similar product as well. It not only cleans the plate, but also conditions it, and the thin oil layer slows down shrinkage. But I made a discovery, and that changes everything. See, I was initially told that DIY gelatin plates are not waterproof and shouldn't be cleaned with water. But I wasn't so sure about that. After all, I put wet paint on my plate all the time, right? So, despite all advice, I sometimes rinsed my plate under cold running water, especially when I was about to refresh it. Nothing ever happened, except that my plate got perfectly clean. And then a thought started creeping into my mind. What if this is just a myth? So, there was only one way to find out. Channeling my inner Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman, I went on a mission to bust that myth. Since I had a heavily shrunken 50 by 50 centimeter plate that I wanted to reshape anyway, I used it for a little experiment. I cut out a 6 by 6 centimeter piece about 7 millimeter thick and placed it in cold water. And nothing happened at first. After 90 minutes, I noticed the first change. The gelatin wasn't dissolving, but it was swelling up. It went from 7 millimeter to 9 millimeter thick. After another 90 minutes, so 3 hours in total, it was already 10 millimeter thick. And that was a point that I realized that not only the thickness had changed, but also the overall surface dimensions. The 6 centimeter piece had expanded to about 6.7 centimeters. After 48 hours, the piece measured 7.6 by 7.6 centimeters and was 11 millimeter thick. That means it had gained 25% in surface area and nearly 60% in thickness. So, is this the best way to refresh your DIY gel plate? I don't know, but it's worth a try because you can still melt it down no matter what. And here I have to add something. In the end, I also noticed that this piece of gelatin had developed some small cracks. However, I can't say for sure if that was caused by the soaking or because I had stretched, bent and pressed the strip or the piece multiple times during the test. If you are unsure about how much water your DIY gel plate needs to refresh, you could combine both methods. Let the plate make the math for you. Soak it in cold water. This is important. Only cold water for 24 to 48 hours and then melt it down. Cause the plate takes the water it needs. This method is definitely more time consuming, but it's also the easiest. If you prefer a quicker solution, you can always use one of the 3 methods I mentioned earlier. In my first video, I showed you how to create a casting mold with a base using a regular picture frame. That was relatively easy, but it took some time. I was super proud of myself until last week, when I suddenly found a ready-made mold with a base in the store. I was like, how? How couldn't I see this the weeks before? How did I not notice this earlier? I don't know. I don't know why. I'm talking about this type of frame. It's actually not a traditional picture frame, but more like a multi-photo display. And it couldn't be more perfect. It's basically ready to use. Why do I say basically? I bought 2 different frames from 2 different stores. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that one frame was poorly constructed. The glass had some wiggle room and part of the frame was already coming apart. The other frame was perfectly fine and ready to use as is. I was pretty sure that the small gaps in the poorly made frame wouldn't allow the gel mass to leak through. It's just too thick. But I wasn't sure whether these gaps would make it harder to remove the solidified gel plate from the mold. So I did a quick test on one side of the frame. I was right. The gel plate didn't release cleanly from the mold. Not a big deal though. I quickly found a solution. At first, I thought I could just slide a thin acrylic sheet into the gap, but cutting such a thin strip of acrylic turned out to be nearly impossible. So I tried something completely different. Please don't ask me how I came up with this idea, but I mixed tissue paper with a little glue and stuffed it into the gap, and it worked perfectly. And if that wasn't enough good news, here's another great tip for you. Now that we know water doesn't harm the gel plate, try moistening the base with a little water before placing your plate inside. This allows the plate to glide smoothly into place without distortion, no slanted angles, no uneven edges. Isn't that amazing? And when storing your gel plate in the mold, just spritz a little water onto the printing side or into the frame. This makes it easier to place back in and gives it a mini freshness boost. And the frame's backing, perfect as a lid. Since it just rests on the frame without sealing it airtight, it allows for some air circulation. One last tip to prevent the backing board from warping due to moisture. I recommend sealing it with acrylic paint or gesso or anything that closes the porous surface. Okay, I hope I was able to answer all the questions clearly. I promise to keep experimenting and keep you updated on any new discoveries. See you next time.